right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Wombo Combo Podcast. That's right, I'm breakycpk, joined as always by BSJ, and we are here on a Tuesday, a little bit different, of course, but BSJ, the day running long yesterday, once again. It's happened a couple of times here, but there's a lot of Dota that you've been casting. There's still even more to come, not to continue to remind you, of course, but no, there's still some great Dota to come. It goes all throughout the rest of this week, and we're finally will have a champion for that European CIS region. So that's just one of the topics we plan to talk about today, of course, but BSJ, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. Today was short. One of the groups has been much closer than the other. So we actually noticed it the other day or earlier today that all of our long days have come from the same group. So, and that group also has like 6 teams that are 3-2 and 2-3, while the other group has a much more bottom and top heavy record. So it just happens to be that today, right, we had 6 games, while yesterday we had 9. And there's been another day that we had 9 games, and 2 of the games went past 60 minutes. So we were there until 6 p.m. when today we ended at around 12:30. So the variance and length of days for 3 best of 3s has been pretty insane, to be honest with you. But it's been fun to cast and follow just a meta shifting throughout the course of the past weeks. And that's something we talked about a bit last week, but it's been a fun ride.
I was going to say, I'm sure you're definitely going to know this patch inside of that. Like, if a team wanted to pick you up as a coach, honestly, after this tournament, I'm sure any team would be lucky to have you right now, man. You're probably learning a lot. No. Yeah, so obviously that taking place. Before we get too much into this, though, by the way, I want to remind you guys, again, any follows, subscriptions, even to the channel here, definitely help out not only our show, but the predictions umbrella in general. We do have a lot of esports style podcast that of course take place on this channel, so be sure to at the very least hit that follow button, including a show that's actually going to be happening a couple hours from now at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight, the Rocket League show. So if you happen to be interested in Rocket League as well, they have a great scene over there. Definitely a couple of good hosts hosting that podcast. So but as far as what we're going to be discussing today, again, there's not a lot going on necessarily, so kind of changing it up a little bit. One of the big things is, we've touched on this a little bit, but I suppose going in a little more in depth with it, is the fact, again, with everything going on right now, and in your case specifically, you're at the BTS play, they're going to the studio there every day, literally casting 4 best of 3s. It's a change of pace, to say the least. So, we've had a couple of players on to kind of give their perspective, but figure why not kind of give a caster's perspective on how things are going, and we see tweets happening from Cap and Bliss that are with you as well. Blitz, what did he do, like 10,000 push-ups or something?
Yeah, he had a challenge with a bunch of his buds to do 10,000 in a month, and he did it in like 26 days or 27 days or something. So he got me into it a bit, where just after we're done with we have like a 10-minute break, usually somewhere between like 6 to 10 minutes between every game. We just go do like 10, 15. I'll do like 10 or 15. He does like 30 push-ups every break. So it is a way to keep us awake. Somehow the days, they seem to get shorter. I guess you kind of just get used to it. It's not necessarily actually getting shorter. But yeah, it helps the day go by. It keeps us energetic, and it's been fun. It's been a really cool bonding experience just hanging out with them in general. And that's just one example of random things we're doing. We've also been doing like a daily Settlers of Catan game for the 10 minutes between every game, where we play 10 minutes of Settlers, where the game is going throughout the course of the day. So some rivalries and feuds have been formed during that. But at Life of a Caster, it's just, I'll let you ask the next question, because I could rattle on about random stuff, so we can have some structure to in this show.
I mean, I've been there personally to an extent, as far as I can't say I've been like as long as you've been doing it right now. It's almost gonna be like 2.5 weeks, I want to say, almost 3 weeks in full, where every day you're gonna be casting. I mean, that's a stretch, man. It's
23 days, by the way.
23 days, actually. Jesus, yeah. So just over 3 weeks. All right, you're almost there, man. Hey, it's gonna get better, right? We got the really good match. Once the playoffs start, it should be a bit better. Yeah, I've definitely gone through stretches before, like a week or so, whether I've done a couple times, from my house when big qualifiers are going on, whether it's the TI qualifiers or some big major, but certainly a different experience there. I guess there's only been a couple of times. One, I did the Epicenter event a couple years back. Actually, myself and Grant were there with a couple of other casters. One where they hosted the competition there, and we're fortunate enough to be able to go. And I just remember we did like the whole group stages beforehand, and it was just over a week. I want to say like 8 days straight, where every day the same routine. You wake up at a set time, they take you over the bus. You sit down. In their case, it was like the small white room where like nothing was really going on. It felt a little shady, but and yeah, you cast some Dota, and then you kind of just rinse and repeat every day. So I kind of wonder for you, you obviously get along very well with Cap and Blitz that you're talking about, and the others that are there. You've done several of these events with them. So board games, I mean, are you guys hanging out behind the scenes quite a bit? Or, I mean, these are long days, so do you just more want to go home and relax?
Oh, yeah. It's funny. We're all very similar in a lot of ways. Obviously, we're not the same people, but for instance, me and Grant, we're staying in an Airbnb during this, where he's upstairs and I'm downstairs, and like we drive back, and then he goes upstairs and plays WoW and basically does whatever, and then I stay downstairs and either relax or I'm on my computer playing random games. It's really frustrating to play on a kitchen table, to play Dota and everything. It's not the most comfortable setup I got. I am on my PC. I just brought it out because I had to drive. But we have just been basically spending all day together. So all of us are just like on the same page of see you tomorrow, guys. The last thing we want to do is like spend too much time around each other and just get tired of each other, which would definitely happen, I think. But me and Grant have a lot in common about random stuff that we've realized, where we're like, are you ready to go? Yeah, let's get out of here. There was nothing that needed to be said, where once we get home, he goes upstairs, I stay downstairs, and we just don't see each other until the next day. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like we don't like each other. It's just like keeping our distance, because we're spending 10 to 14 hours a day in the BTS studio. So during that time, we're all making jokes. There's been a lot of inside jokes throughout the course of the event. A lot of them are actually seen on the stream. Like if you watch the stream every day, you can catch a lot, like keep along with like what we're talking about. And, Cap and I over the course of this have slowly started insulting each other a lot more, and teasing each other for like when I make wrong predictions or anything like that. Like I'll insult how like his Dota skills, or the fact that he shaved his head. So we just joke about him balding and stuff. It's like, there's a lot of little inside jokes, and it's just been quality time. Everyone's oddly talked about. We all came to the same conclusion. We're like, if we had to be in this 23-day casting period, we got a solid group. Like we're all it's not like fake or whatever to act like we like each other on stream or anything. We do all enjoy being in the same place, and we have kind of all agreed that there's not many other people, if any, that we'd rather go through this grind with. So that's been quite enjoyable. And also the only thing I would say that we kind of do fake is that most of us are pretty freaking exhausted while we're on the panel. So somehow Grant, I'm telling you, Grant is a fucking excuse my language. He is almost bipolar in terms of like off the stream. He's like very chill, like I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And then he comes back on the stream and he's like, energy levels, out the freaking roof. So it's a very peculiar but interesting and very funny to be around dichotomy that he's got going on with his personality.
I can vouch for that, definitely. Again, I've been fortunate enough to actually do several of it. I mean, myself and Grant, we actually go way back. Where this is okay. So fun story here for anyone that followed back in the Han days may know this, but the first time I officially met Grant was on an interview that I did with him, and he was known as I think he went by the name Juan Pedro or something like that. It was some silly team that him and a couple of, I forget the other players that were on the team, but there was some random event that we were throwing on, and they just got finished defeating actually a higher seeded team, a decent team. And we're like, who the hell are these guys? And so we made a point to get in touch with Juan Pedro, who, later found out was really GrandGrant. And so this guy comes on. We were doing this webcam setup here where they would webcam into the studio that we had, and I kid you not, I'm sure there's a video somewhere. He's literally wearing a paper bag over his head with the eyes cut out in the paper bag, and he's talking in, like a Spanish accent, like totally put on an accent and everything. And I'm like, this is actually happening right now. This is professional Heroes in New Earth at its finest right now, and esports overall. So
Grant's a character for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And after that, I'm like, I never want to talk to that guy again. That was ridiculous. Just kind of in the moment type deal. But later on, I come to find out who it actually was, and I've learned more and more about his history. And then after the transition to Dota especially happened, I got the chance to actually talk with him quite a bit at I think it was TI7. And you can start to really tell because, I don't want to make this about Grant overall, but anyways, he's had an interesting road to say the least when it comes to his history, but more lately, he has done a phenomenal job at, I don't want to say changing his image as a whole because he definitely still has a bit of his past in him, but he's done an amazing job at just showing the love and the passion that he has for this game, and it translates so well because he probably has the most knowledge out of anyone in the world when it comes to original Dota history and until now. And so I definitely have learned to appreciate him specifically for that. I know many have as well. But then, yeah, to your point, done a couple events with him. Exactly. On camera, he is just over the top sometimes. He has energy somehow. But then, when things are all said and done and, just very, very chill, relaxed. And he's definitely not faking it. It's just, he can turn it on when he needs to when it comes to the commentating side. So
yeah, it's just something that's not humanly possible to be like 24 hours a day or whatever. So he's definitely a gem for the Dota 2 community. I genuinely really like the guy and enjoy working with him. So it's just he is not at all different than what you see on stream. That's just him at his highest energy level. It's not like when he's low energy, he's like a different person. He's just not blasting off the walls at all times or whatever. So yeah. I've grown to appreciate him too. We go way back in terms of our feud or whatever we had. There was even a Reddit post the other day which showed or talked about like a clip of Grant just shit talking me for like an hour on a stream while I talked about my experiences on Summer's Rift or whatever. So it's like there's some deep rooted feud that went on between me and him, and I remember it, but at the same time we don't even remember like why more so than anything, like why he said what he said, or I don't even remember how I felt about it. I just remember being like, why am I like at that time I kind of had beef with a lot of random I'd call them goons kind of thing, and he even referred to himself as such. I just laugh at the fact that him and I have a lot in common randomly, and you would have never thought. And there's just like, oh, what was it? Oh my God. There's something that happened today where we both said we would do, like, I was thinking what I would do in a given situation, and he said the exact same thing that I was thinking. And I'm like, dude, that's a little weird. Like it happens a lot. Like we just have the same random thought processes about similar things. And it's something I've never realized because we didn't spend more than a few days at every event together. I've spent a decent amount of time with Grant. We did like an MDL event like 2 years ago where we did basically what we're doing now for like 6 days or 5 days rather than 23. But this has been a whole nother ball game. We will all come out knowing each other much better.
There's a lot of bonding going on.
Yeah, it's all just good, healthy, enjoying Dota. And even though we are all honestly exhausted, spending time with people like Grant, Cap, Blitz, Gods, Dakota, LD, it's all been honestly just a good time. So glad to have done it. I don't know if I would do it again, like the 23 days in a row, but I'm just happy to have a job and something to do while I'm in quarantine, while everyone else is in quarantine. It doesn't feel like the world is different because we're in our own little shell. Right. We basically just drive 5 minutes from our Airbnb to the studio, and that's we go Airbnb, studio, Airbnb, and that's like all we've done for the last 20 days. So it's pretty it's very sheltering, and you just don't see what's going on. Like, we know, but we don't feel it, I guess.
It's going to be weird when it's over, man.
It is.
Like all of a sudden,
trust me, I feel like I'm in like I am living under a rock for like 3.5 weeks. I have kind of just discontinued my stream for the most part. I'm playing other games than Dota because it's just not in my brain power to take more Dota after casting it for 10 hours. And like, so basically not streaming, even though I'm playing like other games and stuff. But then I also am just not going outside hardly at all. So it's like, and we've gotten in this routine, and we have food orders every day. We've gotten Chipotle as our healthy choice or whatever. And then it's all been really good food. But it's just, we're literally operating on like a school type schedule, in the sense that we do the same thing at the same time every single day. And the service from BTS and their hospitality crew and everything, with helping us at the Airbnb, helping us with food, it's all been incredible. So shout out to them for that. And life's good. It's just like, since the quarantine's happening, I've had a bunch of random requests for coaching sessions. I've had people come into my stream bitching that I'm not playing Dota, and I'm like, I've tried to just ignore all that crap, because I'm like, guys, do you realize how many hours of Dota I am dealing with a day? And I do look forward to when I get back home, because like you said, I've learned a shit ton watching these games, and I really have no other option too, meaning I'm going to be watching 10 hours of Dota a day. What else am I supposed to do with my time? And you're forced to like analyze the drafts, think critically about what I'm seeing. And that's something that's you don't get unless you just do it. And it's really hard to do if you're not casting. So that's one of the really beneficial things. And I've also gotten time to step away from my streaming and be like, okay, how are things I can improve my stream? And because it all really, you just get consumed in whatever daily routine you're doing working in the esports industry. So this has been just a very weird change of pace. And I know I just rattled on for a while, but I know that all came from just talking about Grant. But yes, this whole thing has been a very once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of important too to really help put everything in perspective. We did a little bit last week, but another good example I feel is, like, myself, I originally was attempting to become more of a broadcaster in traditional sports, whether it's basketball, football, whatever. So thinking about it that way, where in that case, your typical broadcast, even if you take baseball, for example, where there's a game almost every day with their schedule and how they play out, that's still, the game itself is 3 hours maybe, right? And that's you put that into perspective. I mean, that's one best of 3 potentially in Dota 2. And so the fact that you're doing 4 of those in a day, every single day. I mean, even just for smaller events. I mean, to help put in, like, you got like a week-long tournament, doing 2 best of 3s a day. That's still 5 to 6 hours of commentating, of watching a product that you then have to, like you said, analyze or play-by-play cast, and it definitely it is a wear and tear, both physically and mentally. For sure. So I trust me, I know where you're coming from in certainly smaller examples, and hope it could help put it into perspective once again for those that are tuning in and maybe trying to get a better understanding of the work that actually is going into all of this. Because then not only that, then the idea that the preparation that's involved, going in every day, what teams do we have? What do they do the previous days? It depends on how in-depth the analysis wants to be, of course, but obviously, every time you get on camera, every time you're doing commentating, you want to do your best to be able to get the information necessary and be as prepared as possible, right? So it is a lot of work. Certainly, it's definitely a big grind when it comes to this commentating here. So. All right, so 3 more days of the group stages as we keep going back to with this event, and then the playoffs start, as I mentioned. And I was double checking the schedule, so it looks like it goes through Sunday. Sunday being the grand finals, and that's going to be that best out of 5. So, of course, to clarify, we've been talking about the ESL CIS and European region tournament that they decided to put on with everything happening, and that $200,000 prize pool. So getting a little more into the event itself, or kind of recapping somewhat as far as some standout things that have been taking place. For me, it says people know Liquid being on the very bottom of their group. In fact, with that,
yeah, I forgot you're a Liquid fan during all this.
It's been brutal. 0-5, man. It's just like, okay, this just was not their tournament. And usually with some of these online events or qualifiers, kind of overlook it a little bit, say, whatever. You can't really do that right now, though, right? Like this is the big event right now for this 2-3 month period. Like, this is it. So to make an excuse like that just doesn't feel fair at all. And it frankly is disappointing to see a team like Team Liquid go 0-5 in this event.
I've already called them out in terms of my disappointment in this, for sure.
Yeah. So
sorry if I interrupted.
Well, no, I mean that's fine. So for me, that was one big standout. But I mean, so what about for you? What has really been eye catching in terms of the standings?
In terms of the standings, I would say VP, not because they're on top, but they have looked like secret level. Like them and Secret. I knew Secret coming in was going to be the best, but VP has looked crushingly dominant in all of their games, and I think Resolution as an individual has probably the most impressed me throughout the course of this event. He's basically carrying them in the way that we know him from previous years in other roles, or the carry role. He's doing that from the offlane, and he's owning. So I really like it. It almost is inspirational to me, since I've personally gone from carry to offlane too, to see someone like him just, for lack of a better word, blossom into what he's turned into. So that's really cool for me to watch. We've also had him in like interviews. We always have interviews after whoever wins the series, and we've interviewed Rezo every single time because he's the only one that wants to do it for VP. And it's been pretty funny at the end of every series. So, like, you have fun winning again and all that kind of stuff, and asking him fun questions. But for me, in terms of standings, I don't think anything's particularly shocked me. Liquid is an incredibly streaky team, and I know the mentality they have a lot. And if they have confidence, they're like, they own. And if they don't have confidence, they suck. And they've admitted that willingly. So it doesn't terribly surprise me after watching their first couple series that it's led to this. It's not an excuse. It's just them as a team. I think they've like tried to create their own version of the meta. And for instance, Storm Spirit's like 1-12 in the last 13 games. And they picked like Storm Spirit like 4 times, and they were first rounding it even. Like the hero's just bad. Every other team stopped picking it, and they just kept picking it. They were picking heroes like Crystal Maiden. Nobody else was picking. And it's just I enjoy watching this league because you see teams like Team Liquid who don't adjust and don't fix it. And then I see teams like Alliance who looked really bad at the start, and I thought they were just going to be bottom of the barrel. So I guess you could say they're kind of surprising me. Because S4's first series as a captain, he looked like a terrible drafter. They looked all over the place. And then compare that to like their 5th series yesterday, and their drafts were better. They looked like the better team. In the second draft, I thought it was pretty even against Na'Vi, and they just outplayed them in all fronts. Like they just looked like a way better team. So that to me, it was pretty mind-boggling how some teams bounce back so quickly to a meta that was clearly established by certain teams. And then the meta's shifted so many times in regards to Dota's. How it works is there's one hero that's considered really good. 5 games or so later, somebody's figured out a way to beat it. So whatever hero is good against that hero becomes higher priority. And so people start banning the hero that counters it, and then you ban that hero. And then because that other hero is now getting picked, there's other heroes that are good against that hero. And suddenly you see heroes you haven't seen the entire freaking tournament getting first rounded, just to counter pick it, just to like deny pick it. It's like, it's really interesting. We're now arriving at like the top 10 heroes or so that are all getting picked over and over again. Like in the off lane, it's like Pangolier, Axe, Mars. And the beginning of the tournament, it was like all Centaur. We've kind of, that hero's fallen off a bit. And like the 4 role, we see Tusk, Earthshaker, Earth Spirit, all these melee bruisers, no more like Rubik's or anything for the most part, unless people pick Enigma, which we saw that against Liquid. And then in like the mid lane, it's Death Prophet. Queen of Pain is like the huge new meta hero that everyone's picking. It's good against Death Prophet. I've seen it now laned. I've seen it picked in the first round like 4 times, and it owned every single game. So Queen of Pain apparently is the new hot shit. And in the safe lane, all like you saw Terrorblade and Wraith King every single game in the NA series, and I've seen maybe 2 Terrorblades and 5 Wraith Kings in 60 games or whatever of EU. So it's just very fascinating to just see like new heroes that came out of nowhere as a response, and then people like, wait a minute, we can't actually counter this, and suddenly Queen of Pain went from this 9th pick counter pick in lane to DP or something to suddenly first round and nobody knows what to do. Yeah. So I almost think in 2 days from now, somebody might know what to do against Queen of Pain, and then she might not be very good anymore. I don't know. But it's just, that's been the most surprising to me, is the teams that have adjusted so quickly. And then teams like Team Liquid have just, I think Team Nigma and Team Alliance are the 2 teams I would say, or not Team Nigma and Team Alliance are the 2 that looked a bit shaky at the start, and then have just come roaring back by quickly reflecting and adjusting what they were doing. And it was quite a pleasure to watch teams of that caliber look really and then suddenly, like the next day, their strategies look different, their drafts are more refined, and they're owning. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you brought it up earlier, too, kind of looking at the standings overall. So, again, don't want to go too in-depth here, especially for your sake. You're already doing plenty of this analyzing on the broadcast there, but Liquid is the only team that's officially eliminated out of Group B. Everyone else has a 3-2 or 2-3 record, other than Team Secret, who's 5-0 at the top. So it is going to be an interesting or a fun finish there, more so as they have 3 more days left of playing matches. In fact,
Group B is hype.
Yeah, so I guess so they do switch off on the days there. So, yeah, so there's 3 more days of total as we talked about. So, yeah, it's going to come down to the wire, really. You'd figure Secret's going to be the number 1 seed. But, again, top 2 move on to the winner bracket. Next 2, so 3rd and 4th, go to the lower bracket. And then the bottom 4 overall in each of the groups get eliminated. So, but Secret and Virtus.pro are on top of their groups respectively. And, yeah, VP certainly... I don't want to say a big surprise there, but I can't say I would have seen them at that 6-0 record.
The fashion they've done it in is what surprised me.
Sure.
Like they look dominant. Like they just look way better than whoever they're playing against. Some of the I think the CIS region was the most impressive. Like they look way better than I expected them to. Like the teams like Viking GG and like even the teams that aren't doing too hot in terms of record, but like Cyber Legacy and Team Unique. That Group B, those teams are very impressive to me in terms of like, it doesn't look like they're just all mediocre. It looks like they're all very solid and putting up a fight. So it's the cool thing about the standings coming in tomorrow is that none of the 2-3 teams are playing each other and none of the 3-2 teams are playing each other. So theoretically, we could have 6 3-3 teams after tomorrow. Theoretically, obviously it's not likely, but it's quite possible that all the teams in the 3-2 section could lose and all the teams in the 2-3 could win. And that would be really funny, but probably not. But the fact that it's possible is worth noting. And so tomorrow is definitely a hype day. It's probably going to be one of the hypest days of the whole group stage, just because other than Secret, who's guaranteed to be first or pretty much guaranteed, and other than Liquid, who's guaranteed out, every single series matters drastically to every single team. So it's basically a playoff. The last 2 days of the group stage for that one. The Group A is kind of lame, to be honest. It's like very little contest there in terms of the 4th, 5th cutoff. But so there's going to be like 1 or 2 really important series. But tomorrow is all like back to back to back. Whoever wins is going to probably advance, and whoever loses is most likely out. So it's quite a hype day tomorrow.
Yeah, and I know sometimes, including myself, people may have their perception on these online events, how much should you really be taking it? But I go back to it with everything going on right now. No, this doesn't impact your DPC rating anymore, but it's still an ESL event, and this is the events happen. Like I said, this really, you think about it, this 2 and 3 month period that we're in now. If you go back a month ago, another month from now, this is going to be the biggest event in that time frame. So you would hope that the teams certainly are giving it their all in that online aspect, and I think it's very, very warranted to be able to take something from it, absolutely, in this event. So, yeah, again, don't want to spend too much more time on this event specifically, but guys, by next week, so the next podcast, next week, we'll know the winner and everything, and it'll be kind of a fun wrap-up, I'm sure, for yourself, too, as far as it all finishing, to discuss how it all plays out, but it's gonna be interesting. Again, we know Secret and VP going to be the top dogs going into the playoffs. At least we'll see if they continue that going through. So, gonna keep an eye on that throughout the week. Hopefully, again, for you guys that are tuning into this podcast, whether it's on the live show or listening to it on your podcast platform, every day those 4 best of 3s are happening, and then once the playoffs start, some really good series definitely taking place. Another event, by the way, that we haven't given really any mention to yet, but BTS, as I'm sure you're aware too, but the BTS Pro Series was officially announced more recently, and they kicked it off on April 10th, so this last Friday, and it's more for the Americas region, and they have 8 teams between South America as well as North America competing in a similar format that's going on with the European CIS region for ESL. So it's basically, in this case, it's only one group of 8 teams, and then they're playing 2 best of 3s. They have 2 best of 3s going each day for the next couple of weeks into a playoff and into a finals there. It's a $50,000 prize pool, so solid money on the line. But again, more content, more coverage, a way for these teams to keep playing for something on the line, and definitely some more action to follow. Of course, this one again more America's focused, as mentioned there. So the teams involved, by the way, it's EG, Quincy Crew, Crazy, Cloud9, Business Associates, Beast Coast, Furia Esports, and Thunder Predator are the 8 teams. I do find it interesting that it's worth noting, Evil Geniuses, they are using stand-ins for Abed and Ramses, of course. Ryoya and Bulba are standing in, but Crazy, they have players like Skitter and Keizu even. So I don't know if they're just playing from Europe.
They are.
Okay, that makes sense then, I guess. But yeah, that's so that is interesting to note then, that they're dealing with the ping issues there, playing across the region. But any thoughts from yourself, BSJ, in terms of this event that's going on?
My thoughts is that I know what's going on, and I've heard all the rumors about how bad Cloud9 is. So that to me is a good hoot. I hate to root against anybody on the team, but something about Eternal Envy running through players like, dirty laundry is entertaining to me to see him lose. So something about that's just really funny to me. And I've heard the memes and read all the things on Reddit, but obviously I don't watch any more Dota than the freaking 10 to 14 hours a day that I'm already doing. So other than the memes and stuff I've heard about from it, I have not watched it, but I think it's a great thing that it's going on. I think all content, a lot of people are just very happy to have stuff to watch and do while they're just stuck at home. So yeah, great use of a bad situation to experiment and try stuff in terms of leading into next season. Obviously, we talked about last week for the leagues. This is kind of a preview of what we're going to get. And I just smile because I just can't believe, somebody in chat mentioned, I just can't believe how bad Cloud9 is. I actually can't fathom how a team of those players can just never win. How can you just not win a game? I think they're 1-17 or whatever is what somebody in chat said. And I'm aware it was really bad, but that's a whole nother level of bad. So I've gotten a big hoot out of that. But aside from that, I did cast most of those teams, if not all of them. I did cast all those, I believe, at the original ESL Online League, NA and SA Region League part. So I did see all those rosters with the EG stand-ins, and it was entertaining, but quite frankly, just not nearly as good a Dota as the EU region. Not even close. It's pretty palpable to see the level of play in EU compared to NA. And there's a reason why Terrorblade and Wraith King are so popular in NA, because all people know what to do is creeps. In the EU region, we've been seeing just run at you nonstop. The pace of the game is insanely fast. A lot of heroes like Necrophos get picked every now and then. Bristleback's been the number 1 pick out of nowhere. Weaver carries even seeing picks just because it's such a fast-paced hero. And in NA, whatever teams seem to have the better scaling lineup almost always won. In EU, it's like actually kind of cool because you see one team with the better scaling and the other team with the fast-paced lineup, and you're all like the whole game wondering, is that team going to be able to make it to the point where they win? You know, it's like actually fighting an uphill battle, and it's been way more entertaining to watch because in NA, both teams kind of just pick to scale, while there, usually one team has some form of scaling, right? But they usually try to establish an early lead and set the pace of the game. And the team that's been setting the pace of the game has actually won a lot more than the other team. We've been seeing like Nature's Prophets mid and all that kind of stuff you just don't see in NA at all. And I'm curious if it ever bleeds into NA, like if people are ever going to like watch this ESL online league in the region that's clearly better and see what kind of style they're playing, because it's hard to emulate it in pubs in NA just because we've talked about this. But in the team setting, if you can try to get on that same page and really learn from these teams, like even like Team Secret is just incredible to watch. But yeah, the leagues, they're all great, but I'm just going to keep following this Cloud9 story and see how long they keep their sponsor, because that seems embarrassing if you ask me, to an organization of that caliber.
Yeah, they are very prestigious when it comes to the esports world. So you do got to wonder if they don't pick it up quickly in this event that they're in here. Again, the only one going on, especially for them in the Americas region right now. Then things could change. Absolutely, wouldn't be surprised.
They are quite a laughingstock as of now. You compare them to like Alliance, for instance, who just lost 2 players and added a new captain.
Yeah,
and they've like gathered together as a team, and ideas are clearly being spread and they're clearly growing. And you compare that to Cloud9, it's like, it's like, what? Like there's no excuse, as you said. Like this is all that's going on right now. And it's clearly quite possible to grow as a unit quite quickly. I don't need them to win every game, but I need them to look better than they did yesterday, because that's something that's very possible. And that's obviously just not happening.
Well, kind of a side thing here from that discussion is the idea that you do kind of wonder, again, because I really don't know. I haven't been enough around behind the scenes with a lot of these competitive teams, but how much research actually is done by a lot of these teams, or do they have people that are assigned specifically to look up these other teams or watch all these other games that are happening and pick up on such strategies? Obviously, you think about roles like the coach specifically that come to mind, but I remember, God, there was a documentary, this is like 3 or 4 years back, where Kips, she was a part of the Fnatic organization, and they had done the documentary on that team, as well as a couple others leading up to TI, I believe it was. And her job specifically was more about doing just that, analyzing other teams, what they're doing, analyzing the meta, and bringing in all that data to then figure out what they could potentially try themselves. And I understand data only means so much, and you don't want to just say, oh, everything else, or all these teams are running this, so we should be 100% running this. But, to your point about this Terror Blades and Wraith King meta in North America, and yet that's not really seen over there in the European CIS region, which they're having 4 best of 3s every single day being played for 2.5-3 weeks. Do teams not have these people with hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars involved in a scene like this? Like, it almost seems like common sense that you would have somebody that would be designated to a role like that. But
it's very hard, because it's not enough to know what heroes are getting picked. You have to understand what makes them good, and you have to understand how to play them as a team. Like it doesn't matter if you have a level 25 Dota plus Nature's Prophet player on your team. If your team doesn't know why Nature's Prophet is good, what makes him good, his timings, what he's going to build, what he's going to contribute to the team, it just doesn't matter. Like it actually just doesn't matter. And I firmly am of the opinion that I'm not trying to call anyone out. So I'm trying, like, this isn't like directed at anyone in particular. I think that job is really hard to do properly. I think that's an incredibly difficult job. And I don't know if there's anyone in the world outside of like a very select few of coaches that can do it like at the level that some of these teams are doing. And there's a reason why, like we were talking to Arzard, I believe, who coached, or Arzeek, I think Arzeek is his name. Yeah. He coached VP last year, and he's coaching, I think Unique or Cyber Legacy, one of those, like one of the other CIS teams. And we were talking to him in one of the interviews, and there's a reason why you're like getting a cycle through of the same coaches, because really the only reason teams break up for the most part is because they don't see eye to eye with whatever members of the staff or players on their team. But there's very few people that are actually able to do this job. And in the NA region, I actually don't know who does it. Like, I actually don't know anyone who does that job. And like, it's interesting. I feel like I know a lot about Dota and I study a lot about Dota. I don't even know how well I would do that job. I'd have to give it a shot, for instance. Like, I really don't know how much goes into that job. And it actually does take a lot of experience. I'm also aware, but like the level of understanding to like gather a team around a hero, like that's why the difference between tier 1 teams and tier 2 teams is so palpable, because tier 1 teams can play almost every hero at the highest level, like almost every hero. And usually with tier 2 teams, they have a kind of a crutch of like 4 or 5 heroes that their entire strategy revolves around. And if they don't have at least 1 or 2 of those heroes, they just can't play Dota. Like, they actually just don't know like what they're doing in comparison to these tier 1 teams. So
yeah.
When it comes to jobs like that, dude, these NA teams have it, like all that kind of stuff. It seems there's so many things in Dota that just seems so fixable. And I know what you're saying. Like, it seems like it should just not be that way. But that's like the beauty, but also the freaking agony of Dota is like a lot of these teams are talking about. I've tried to ask them, what do you feel like you're growing the most about when it comes to this tournament as you're going over the course of it? And they are watching each other. They're watching a lot of games. They're realizing for themselves, they're self-correcting. Like, what went wrong? Was it our view of the draft? Was it the way we played the draft? Like, is it the heroes were prioritizing it? Like, what is it? You know, and a lot of them have talked about how their view on the meta and the way they're approaching the best of 3. Like, just today we talked to Aramis of Viking GG, one of the teams that have come a long way. And he said that the way we've recovered coming from game 1 to game 2 has changed a lot over the course of this tournament. And it really does show in their results. They've had, I believe, like almost all of their wins. They lost the first game and then won the next 2. So it really shows that they're adjusting to the teams they're playing against. And it's very hard to, it's just like in programming and like computers, where if there's a bug and it says error, you get the trial and error almost everything to find out what component of is the issue. And it's like in Dota, there's so much that can go wrong in a game. It's a very difficult skill to be able to say, this is what's wrong, fix it. You know, there's a lot of potential causes for the same thing. So listening to these guys, they're all just very, like, the teams that are doing better seem to be very confident in what they're doing. They seem to be open to ideas. It sounds like even like with Alliance, they, for instance, are just all in on S4. Like, S4 they trust him. They're able to bounce their own ideas off of him, but at the end of the day, it's his say, and they all have to buy into it. Like Hanskin talked about, or I think it was Limp, said, we have a whole new play style now, and it's very clear if you watch their games. And sometimes we just don't play it perfectly because S4 is making the calls or he's the one making the draft, and we've never played that before. But rather than, like, I tell you from NA perspective, I assure you there are a lot of freaking times where you do that and the team will blame the draft rather than blaming the fact that we didn't play the draft properly. And I can tell with that team, the atmosphere seems pretty healthy in regards to all inning on one guy's idea of Dota, but bouncing your ideas off of that one centered unit. And I can tell you, based on hearing and talking briefly to the people of C9, there are way too many voices going on in that team, like way too many. And it's like, I assure you that there is chaos, turmoil, a lot of random shit in that roster, because if they were able to band around one guy's idea of Dota and just basically be humble and like have enough humility to do so, that
OG.
team would improve. What?
I was
OG. Yes, OG, absolutely. There is no secret. Like, when I asked No-Tail, like, what about you guys? Are you able to just throw a roster together and just look better than almost every team in the world, despite having 2 or 3 new players when some other teams collapse with one change? And he's like, obviously, I can't tell you my secrets, but we like each other and we listen to each other and we buy into my game plan. Like, I'm telling you, NA is so full of, like, I don't like most of the people that play Dota in NA. Like, I actually just don't like them. It's not that I don't like them as Dota players. Like, I don't like how they contribute to a team.
Attitude,
I hate to say it, but a lot of the reason why I gave up playing professional primarily was I believe in all the teams I ever played with, there's maybe 2 players I can look back on fondly where I say I would play with them again. I enjoyed the experience of playing with them. Not all of them are bad people, okay? Like they're not like assholes. They just don't handle conflict. They don't like put in the work that everyone else is doing. Like I know for a fact on some of these NA teams, I'm not gonna rat people out, that there's imbalance of work ethic, that there's lack of trust between team to team, teammate to teammate, where I can tell you if you don't trust your teammate and he's supposed to be the one that carries you, like say he's got the 10th pick or whatever, you're going to play differently if you don't trust that guy. You're going to be like, if your item build was better off enabling him to win the game, you're not going to do that if you don't trust him. You're going to build items for yourself. That's what's going to happen. And I can tell in these EU teams, the ones that are the best, some games no one is the center of attention for VP, and all of the strategy revolves around his hero, and like the pace of the game is set by his hero, and everything everyone else does is based on his hero. And in other games, it's Rezo. And in other games, it's ILTW, or not ILTW. Is it ILTW?
Yeah.
Yes. I get mixed up the team sometimes. Sometimes it's ILTW. And I'm just like, you can just tell they like each other. You can just tell that they're willing to just do whatever it takes to get to the same goal. And I am telling you in NA, it just does not happen from every team I've experienced. And a lot of these tier 2, tier 3 teams, I've played with most of these guys at some point. Like, at some point, and it is a mentality issue beyond comprehension to most people who've never experienced it. And I know I've rattled on for a long time. It's a very obviously passionate, sensitive point for someone like me, but mentality wise, it is miserable to play competitive Dota in the NA region. And like I hear about it too, and there's very few teams in the CIS and EU region that I've talked to where anyone seems remotely like, yeah, obviously they could be faking it. There's no way to know, but they just seem to enjoy getting better and learning the game of Dota 2 together, and that's what's supposed to matter in a team setting. And easier said than done, but there's a reason why the growth of the CIS region, for instance, it doesn't surprise me. That region has increased dramatically in terms of the tier 3 and tier 3 scene, tier 2 and tier 3 scene. Dramatic, like the skill level is insanely high compared to like a year or two ago. And even though the rosters are kind of shuffling, sometimes personalities conflict and everything. It's just the mentality of trying to get better. And like you talk about having these coaches, these analysts, I'll tell you straight the hell up. There may be people that can do it. There are plenty of people in NA who are not coachable and malleable. Like they're just not. Like you will not get through to them. They will not listen to you. Like, yeah, they'll hear you, but they won't listen. And that's where I draw the whole NA's problems from. Like it's actually almost demoralizing to say it out loud. To be like, this is because it really brings back like vivid experiences of my own. And by no means do I think I'm some, high or what. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal or I was above all this crap. Like it's very easy to buy into this crap too. And it took me not playing for 6 months plus to realize what the problem was in all my teams and that I was one of the contributing factors by buying into a mentality that's a failure's mentality. And it's just like, I'm going to probably cut myself off there. But this whole watching this EU CIS region at an intimate level in the sense that I'm watching them so much every day. We're interviewing teams. You can see the changes they're making. You can see the growth. And that is something I have not seen in any team I've ever played on or like seen in the NA region. And it's just really cool. But it almost feels like a fairy tale. That's like what it feels like from my perspective.
Yeah, we are running a little bit long here, but I think those are some fantastic points. Very well said, and it honestly you kind of think about just esports as a whole, not even necessarily Dota 2 or North America region, but esports as a whole, just the lack of structure that is within in a lot of cases, and that is growing pains, right? We are still very early on in the big scheme of things. There has been more foundation in certain games that have taken place, and you do look at structures behind some of these franchise leagues, and the fact they have coaches, they have trainers, they have all these things. You got to kind of wonder, what that would be like, within the Dota 2 scene if it was to come to that. But obviously that's a whole nother discussion once again. But yeah, there was another topic that I thought would be kind of interesting to discuss as well. But honestly, we could save it for another time because we are getting up to the hour mark here. So I think it makes sense to
Sorry for running on there.
No, never be sorry, man. That's why people tune into the show, right? To hear myself and especially your opinions. Yes, yeah, you're rambling as you call it. But no, I honestly think that was very well said in a lot of ways. So. Yeah, it was a good rant, as TCG
somebody in chat called it a nice rant. I guess that's like a left-handed compliment. The rant was good.
Yeah, right. No, but so I think we are going to start wrapping up here, guys. Again, as far as recapping and stuff, not a whole lot to go over once again. Next week will be a little bit better once as this event will officially be over. Well, that BSJ, of course, is commentating for, and a couple other things are happening. But we'll see. We'll take it week by week, as we all are right now, especially. But we definitely plan to be here every week as we have been, of course. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. But BSJ, before we do wrap up, anything else before?
I've said enough, as always.
Fair enough. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and start wrapping it up officially. One more time, feel free to follow the channel as well as even subscribe if you would like. It does help support not only our podcast, but the whole Prediction Esports Umbrella podcast. And about an hour from now, 9 p.m. Eastern, on this very channel, there will be a Rocket League podcast as well. So if you happen to be interested in Rocket League, definitely stick around for that or tune back in, I suppose, in about an hour from now. But as far as the Wombo Combo podcast, we are officially wrapping up. Until next time, have a good night.